Jades have a very special meaning in Chinese culture. They are associated with preservation, and in ancient times they were actually believed to confer immortality. So they were very, very lucky sort of stones. They were also immensely precious, and they were more valuable, the best jades were more valuable than gold. So for all of those reasons, jades are associated with royalty in China. And way back in the Han Dynasty, the royal family actually had suits made out of linked discs of jades to be buried in the belief that these suits would preserve their bodies. The jades that I'm showing you today in our collection at Manchester Art Gallery all came from one man, and his name was John Edward Yates. And he lived in Rochdale, a few miles north of Manchester, and he owned a cotton spinning business. He was born in 1849, and he collected jades in the early 1900s, so from about 1900 until his death in 1934. And when he died, he very generously donated his entire collection to the art gallery. The reason that I've chosen these two pieces, the main reason is we're planning to put them on display soon at the gallery in our forthcoming climate gallery. I also think it's quite interesting that they represent two distinct branches of Chinese culture, in that one object is Taoist and the other object is a Buddhist object. The figure over here on the left in white jade is a figure of one of the 8 Taoist Immortals. It was carved, we think, between about 1900 and 1920, so not that old actually. Lan is one of the 8 Taoist Immortals. Taoism is a philosophical system which looks at the world in terms of opposing forces.
Yeah, some is philosophy, theory. Taoist is some Dogao, we call Dogao means the way of life, the way you behave. Yeah.
The Taoist Immortals, 8 of them, they were legendary figures that lived in China in medieval times, and they each have different attributes. They all started life as ordinary mortals, and they achieved immortality mostly because of moral conduct in their lives, that they lived in a way that considered others. 6 of the immortals are male. There is 1 female immortal. And you're thinking, what about number 8? 6 and 1 is 7, what about the 8th? The 8th is Lan. Now Lan is interesting because in this case, in our figure, Lan Taiho is definitely female. So she's very tall and slim, she's wearing a robe with a girdle around her waist, and she's definitely female. But sometimes, sometimes Lan is depicted as male. Sometimes Lan is depicted as having male pattern baldness and a beard and a moustache. Lan is the patron of gardeners and florists, and we can tell that because she's carrying a hoe for gardening over her shoulder, and she has here an intricate basket which holds fungus. This figure is Guanyin, the goddess of mercy. This is made out of serpentine. Serpentine is a distinctive green colour. It's always green. It was made towards the end of the 19th century. We don't have an exact date. Guanyin is a Buddhist Bodhisattva. So a Bodhisattva is kind of the Buddhist equivalent of a saint. She's particularly associated with things like childbirth, and there's also depictions of Guanyin having a fish basket with her. She represents being able to come to the aid of sailors and fishermen, so people who work at sea. She's got this sort of flowing sash around her, and she's holding a lotus flower in her hand, and the lotus is a symbol of purity, purity of the body, purity of the mind, purity of speech. It's a very important Buddhist symbol, and it's interesting with both of these sculptures, there's a lot of references to the natural world. Do you have any jades in your life? What kind of objects?
Her mum, she wanted to put it in her coffin when she passed away, about 10 years. So they take it out this from her mum, from her mother. They say they will fight for evil spirits. So that's also Guanyin,
That's what we believe in Chinese way.
Oh, thank you so much. So that's brilliant. That's a really great illustration of how jade is very much alive and well in Chinese culture today.